We've all heard the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Learning to read those pictures gives us advantages in school, work, and life. Images are primary. Evidence strongly suggests that humans made use of images before text. Even today, humans create images to convey ideas, complex concepts, and emotions, not only for personal expression or art. Text is an image, and an image is a text. Everything we see is an image. As infants, we learn to read images months before we become verbal, and years before we attempt to become fluent in written language. Perhaps you have witnessed a toddler who can communicate through sign language before learning to speak. Being fluent in the language of images gives us an advantage at school, at work, and home. From a young age, a great deal of educational emphasis is placed on teaching children how to identify and read words and understand their meanings. So too do we need to learn to identify, read, and understand images, to become literate in visual language, in order to communicate successfully in our increasingly image-saturated culture. In our human history, there have been three major advancements in visual communications. 5,000 years ago, cuneiform writing was invented. Its effects on Sumerian civilization were profound. Some 4,500 years after, in 15th century Germany, the typeset was used to produce editions and serials of the printed word. It too launched civilization into new ground. 500 years later, on Christmas Day of 1991, the World Wide Web went live. Today, in 2015, we consume hundreds of billions of images shared and directed toward us. We are living in an age of communications revolution. As a person who came before digital communications, it is truly an exciting time to witness the changes and possibilities emerge. Our students are born of this time, and they are digital natives. Today's Western society is highly visual, and visual imagery is no longer supplemental to other forms of information. New digital technologies have made it possible for almost anyone to create and share visual media. Yet the pervasiveness of images and visual media does not necessarily mean that individuals are able to critically view, use, and produce visual content. Individuals must develop these essential skills in order to engage capably in a visually oriented society. Visual literacy empowers individuals to participate fully in a visual culture. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation study found the amount of consumption of visual media rose from 6 hours 21 minutes in 2009 to 7 hours 38 minutes in 2013. On Instagram alone, 20 billion photos have been uploaded since 2010. Media consumption is not just happening during a student's personal time, but during school as well. 21st century students need to be able to read the world through the process of vision. To do this, they need to know the alphabet, vocabulary, and grammar of seeing. Leading researchers, educators, museum professionals, filmmakers, and artists believe that being fluent in visual language can improve one's creativity, critical thinking, educational achievement, empathy towards others, as well as the ability to decipher technology. Many of us employ visual language, often without realizing it. Young people are consuming images at an extraordinary rate. It is imperative they learn how to read images, that sensory literacy joins textual and computer literacy as part of the core curriculum. Nearly 30% of the brain's cortex is devoted to visual processing, more than the other human senses. The optic nerve has over 1 million nerve fibers. 90% of all information we take in from the world we take in visually. With so much of the brain's cortex devoted to visual processing, it is logical that visual literacy is the key sensory literacy. The idea of teaching others to become visually literate is not a new idea. In 1969, the Journal of Visual Literacy was formed to explore this very need we discuss today. Currently, we are gaining a new understanding of the human senses, due in part to the current digital revolution and advancements in the study of brain science. The Association of College and Research Libraries, ACRL, is a professional association with a mission of improving and enhancing the information needs of higher education, teaching, and learning. ACRL has developed 7 visual literacy standards and their learning outcomes for higher education. These standards can be easily adopted for secondary school. Standard 1. The visually literate student determines the nature and extent of the visual material needed. Standard 2. The visually literate student finds and accesses needed images and visual media effectively and efficiently. Standard 3. The visually literate student interprets and analyzes the meanings of images and visual media. Standard 4. The visually literate student evaluates images and their sources. Standard 5. The visually literate student uses images and visual media effectively. Standard 6. The visually literate student designs and creates meaningful images and visual media. And Standard 7. The visually literate student understands many of the ethical, legal, social, and economic issues surrounding the creation and use of images and visual media, and accesses and uses visual materials ethically. So now, we hopefully understand the need for visual literacy in 21st century education, and we have useful standards that we can use in whole or part depending on curricular needs. In total, these series of skills used as a form of critical thinking enhance one's intellectual capacity. While there may not be standards that address visual literacy in your disciplines, it is not the province of art education alone to prepare our students to become visually literate. If it is our mission to prepare students to work and thrive in a global culture, we must teach them how to see. We must teach them to understand how others communicate visually, to understand others' ideas and cultures. Quite simply, we educators must adapt to our students' needs. Again, everything we see is an image. Both we and they should not remain ignorant of such a large part of our sensory experiences. Through this presentation and in the sharing to follow, I hope that you can find some part of these ideals and concepts useful for your own curricular use, and you can say, I see what you mean.